Have you ever wondered how the ultimate modern strike would actually unfold if decades of shadow warfare finally boiled over into the light? We often see the headlines, the threats, the brief flashes of violence on our screens. But the reality of a full-scale, coordinated assault by the United States and Israel against Iran's military and nuclear infrastructure is something far more complex, far more terrifying, and meticulously calculated. Imagine the deeply secured briefing rooms deep inside the Pentagon and the Kiryat in Tel Aviv. The air in those rooms is thick with tension, heavy with the weight of impending history. The military commanders and intelligence directors are not looking at a simple battle map. They are looking at a master plan, a highly classified and deeply hypothetical blueprint we will call Operation Epic Fury. This is not about ground troops marching blindly across a desert. This is about physics, geopolitics, and a brutal orchestration of technology and timing. It is about understanding the delicate line between deterrence and catastrophe. So, let us sit down, take a deep breath, and walk through exactly how this massive geopolitical rupture would happen, week by week, decision by agonizing decision. The history leading up to this moment cannot be ignored. For decades, the Middle East has been locked in a cold war of proxies, assassinations, and cyber espionage. Israel operates under the unyielding premise of the Begin Doctrine, a strategic imperative dictating that no sworn enemy of the Jewish state will ever be allowed to acquire a weapon of mass destruction. For the United States, the strategic objective is maintaining global hegemony, securing the flow of energy, and preventing a regional nuclear arms race that could destabilize the entire planet. When diplomacy collapses, when the red lines are finally crossed, the military option is pulled from the vault. This is how the first week goes. You might think a war of this magnitude starts with a massive, deafening explosion, but real modern warfare begins in absolute, chilling silence. It begins in the invisible realm of the electromagnetic spectrum. Before a single physical bomb is dropped, American and Israeli cyber warfare units, the successors to the teams that created the infamous Stuxnet virus, would unleash highly sophisticated malware into the Iranian grid. The goal is to blind the enemy, to cripple early warning radars, surface-to-air missile targeting systems, and military communication networks. The objective of this first week is crystal clear: seize air superiority and decapitate the leadership's ability to coordinate a cohesive defense. Once the digital blinding is underway, the physical blinding begins. The night skies over the Persian Gulf and the borders of Iraq would suddenly be filled with the distinct, low roar of EA-18 growlers. These electronic warfare jets are not there to drop bombs. They are designed to do one highly specialized thing: jam enemy radar frequencies so completely that Iranian missile operators looking at their screens see nothing but white noise and static. They are the invisible shield for what comes next. With the door violently kicked open, the decapitation strike initiates. Hundreds of Tomahawk cruise missiles would launch simultaneously from U.S. Navy guided missile destroyers and fast attack submarines lurking in the Mediterranean Sea, the Red Sea, and the Arabian Sea. These missiles, hugging the terrain to avoid detection, are programmed with terrifying precision. At the exact same time, Israeli F-15 IRM fighter bombers would cross hostile airspace, utilizing deeply rehearsed flight paths and aerial refueling to reach their targets. Let's consider the targets. They are not random. They are striking air defense batteries, vital communication nodes, and the secretive command compounds of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. The political leaders and commanders launching these weapons face an immediate, crushing moral and strategic dilemma. Many of these command nodes are intentionally nested deep within urban centers, hidden near civilian infrastructure, hospitals, and schools. The strategic goal is to paralyze the enemy's nervous system, but the tactical reality means calculating blast radiuses to the exact meter to avoid catastrophic civilian casualties. This is the excruciating burden of leadership, knowing that every multi-million-dollar missile you authorize carries the weight of massive geopolitical fallout. If you hit an apartment building by mistake, you hand your enemy a massive propaganda victory and risk turning the global community against you. By the end of the first week, the physical architecture of the Iranian military command is shattered. The leadership is forced deep underground, Their communications are severed, and their skies are completely vulnerable. But make no mistake, they are not defeated. They are simply regrouping. Here comes week 2. You cannot back a major, proud regional power into a corner and expect them to simply surrender and wave a white flag. As the initial shock wears off, Iran would immediately move to neutralize the attacker's advantages and leverage its own deeply prepared asymmetric capabilities. The strategy here shifts violently from the skies to the seas, specifically focusing on the most critical economic choke point on the entire planet, the Strait of Hormuz. Roughly 20% of the world's petroleum passes through this narrow, shallow waterway. Iran's ultimate counterstrike capability isn't just military, it is fundamentally economic. If they can close the strait, global energy markets crash within hours, insurance premiums for commercial shipping skyrocket, and the pressure on Washington to end the war immediately becomes unbearable. The second week becomes a deadly, claustrophobic naval duel. Iran's anti-access/area denial, or A2/AD, strategy relies heavily on thousands of fast-attack swarm boats, hidden coastal anti-ship missile batteries, and advanced acoustic sea mines. Imagine the sheer psychological stress of a 22-year-old radar operator on a U.S. Arleigh Burke-class destroyer in the dead of night. They are staring at a glowing screen, trying to differentiate between a harmless civilian fishing vessel and a swarm of speedboats packed with high explosives racing toward their ship at 40 knots. It is a terrifying, high-stakes game of numbers and split-second judgments. Let's consider Scenario 1. Iran fires a massive, overwhelming barrage of cheap, domestically produced anti-ship cruise missiles and Shahid suicide drones at the Allied fleet. The U.S. and Israeli navies must rely on their incredibly advanced Aegis combat systems to survive. But here is the brutal quantitative reality of modern warfare. They are firing highly sophisticated interceptor missiles that cost upwards of $2 million apiece to shoot down incoming drones that cost perhaps $200,000 to build. It is a mathematical bleed-out. You can win every tactical engagement, shoot down every drone, and still lose the strategic war if you run out of interceptors before the enemy runs out of cheap drones. Let's consider Scenario 2. Iran realizes it cannot win a direct conventional fight, so it commands its proxy forces, Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, and various heavily armed militias in Iraq and Syria, to open multiple massive fronts against Israel and U.S. bases across the region. Thousands of unguided rockets rain down on Tel Aviv and Haifa, overwhelming the Iron Dome. Mortars strike U.S. outposts in the Syrian desert. The risk escalation here is absolutely terrifying. A small tactical miscalculation, a single missile slipping through the defense grid and sinking a U.S. aircraft carrier, taking 5,000 American lives to the bottom of the Gulf, would instantly turn a targeted strike campaign into a sprawling, uncontrollable, generation-defining regional war. The commanders must maintain absolute focus amid the chaos, securing the choke points and neutralizing the coastal batteries before the global economy bleeds out and public support evaporates. By the time we enter the grueling third week, the airspace is mostly secured, and the immediate naval threat in the strait is contained, albeit at a staggeringly high cost of munitions, billions of dollars, and frayed nerves. Now comes the primary strategic objective of Operation Epic Fury, strategic destruction. The ultimate target is the Iranian nuclear program. This is the core reason the war started in the first place. But there is a massive, almost insurmountable engineering problem. The crown jewels of Iran's nuclear ambitions, the uranium enrichment facilities at Natanz and Fordow, are not sitting openly on the surface like normal factories. They are buried incredibly deep inside jagged mountains, protected by layer upon layer of solid granite, earth, and heavily reinforced concrete. You cannot destroy these facilities with standard smart bombs or cruise missiles. You need something highly specialized. You need a terrifying marvel of destructive engineering. This is where the B-2 Spirit stealth bombers enter the narrative. Flying directly from Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri, across the Atlantic Ocean, refueling in midair multiple times, these massive, bat-winged aircraft would slip into Iranian airspace under the cover of darkness, entirely invisible to whatever remains of the battered Iranian radar network. But what weapon is actually used to penetrate dozens of meters of solid mountain? Well, the Pentagon has this deeply classified bunker buster bomb, the GBU-57 Massive Ordnance Penetrator, or MOP. Think about this weapon for a second. It is a 30,000-pound cylinder of hardened steel, packed with highly lethal explosives. It is heavier than a school bus. It does not simply explode on impact like a normal bomb. It uses its immense kinetic energy, dropping from tremendous altitude, to literally burrow deep into the earth. It punches through solid rock and steel-reinforced concrete for a terrifying few seconds before a delayed, smart fuse finally triggers the massive warhead deep underground. When the GBU-57 detonates, the surface of the mountain would shake like a massive earthquake. Entire subterranean complexes, centrifuges, and laboratories would be instantly vaporized or sealed beneath thousands of tons of collapsed rock forever. But once again, the political and military commanders face a chilling introspection. Destroying a deeply buried nuclear facility carries the severe, unpredictable risk of releasing radioactive material into the atmosphere or the local water table. The ethical compromises of preemptive war are stark and unforgiving here. Do you risk poisoning the local environment, potentially killing innocent civilians slowly over time, to prevent a hostile regime from acquiring the ultimate weapon of mass destruction? The strategic objective is finally met. The spinning centrifuges are crushed into dust, but the moral weight of the action is a heavy, dark shroud over the tactical victory. As the thick smoke clears and the dust settles over the mountains, this is how the fourth week unfolds. The grand explosions, the massive cinematic strikes, and the shocking headlines fade, replaced by a grueling, relentless, and exhausting battle rhythm. The objective now transitions to sustained dominance and hunting. Air superiority has been decisively achieved, but that dominance must be violently maintained 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Fleets of 5th-generation F-22 Raptors and F-35 Lightning IIs would roam the skies with absolute impunity. These jets are not just fighters. They act as flying supercomputers, vacuuming up electronic data from the ground below and striking targets of opportunity before they can hide. But the real, unblinking heroes of this final phase, if you can call them that, are the MQ-9 Reaper drones. Imagine the drone operators sitting in air-conditioned, windowless trailers thousands of miles away in the deserts of Nevada, staring intensely at glowing thermal imaging screens. They are hunting the ghosts of the Iranian military, mobile ballistic missile launchers hiding in heavy civilian traffic, surviving Revolutionary Guard commanders moving desperately between safe houses under the cover of night. It is a terrifying game of extreme patience and devastating, fiery suddenness. The psychological toll on the surviving Iranian forces on the ground is immense, almost paralyzing. They know that at any moment, without any sound or warning, a Hellfire missile could descend from the clear blue sky and end their lives. But the toll is also deeply felt by the attackers. The state leaders sitting in Washington and Jerusalem must now brutally grapple with the long-term consequences of their actions. They have successfully destroyed the physical infrastructure of the nuclear program. They have decisively decimated the military apparatus. But you cannot bomb knowledge. You cannot drop a 30,000-pound bunker buster on an ideology or a national identity. The surviving elements of the Iranian leadership, and perhaps a large portion of the civilian population, will be far more radicalized, more deeply entrenched in their hatred and desire for revenge. The geopolitical shockwaves of Operation Epic Fury will ripple outward across the globe for decades. Will opportunistic powers like Russia or China step into the chaotic power vacuum left in the Middle East? Will the destroyed infrastructure and shattered economy create a failed state, breeding a new, even more violent generation of insurgents and terrorists? This is the agonizing, unavoidable truth of modern geopolitics and grand strategy. War is a tool of state policy, but it is a blunt, incredibly unpredictable instrument. The tactical actions on the battlefield, the brilliant jamming of radars, the desperate naval duels in the Strait, the flawless delivery of precision bunker busters, all achieved their immediate, stated goals. The mission was a military success, but the strategic victory remains elusive, floating just out of reach in a dark sea of long-term consequences. As the fourth week comes to a close, the immediate, fiery combat might slow down to a simmer, but the conflict is far from over. The skies remain heavily patrolled, the seas remain nervously guarded, and the entire world holds its breath, waiting anxiously to see what rises from the smoking ashes. Because in the end, when the last bomb finally falls and the echoes of the explosions fade into history, the true cost of Operation Epic Fury is not measured in billions of dollars or destroyed centrifuges. It is measured in the unpredictable, vastly more dangerous world it leaves behind. Are we truly safer? Or have we simply reset the bloody clock for a much more devastating confrontation tomorrow?